Hello, welcome to the France 24 interview. My guest today begins her new book with the moment that millions of French learned that Vladimir Putin was acting as the personal banker to a far-right French party that's out to destroy the European Union. Cécile Vessier is a professor of Russian and Soviet and post-Soviet studies at Rennes 2 University. Now, she recalls the very first reports in late 2014 that the National Front Party, led by Marine Le Pen, had received over 9 million euros as a loan from a Kremlin-sponsored bank. Now, it was a headline waiting to happen. Le Pen and Putin aren't just mutual admirers. They're also united in their hostility to the European Union and in their determination to see it fail. Now, in her new book, it's out in French. It's called Les réseaux du Kremlin en France, or the Kremlin's networks in France. Cécile Vessier shows how the National Front loan is just really the most visible part of a far wider campaign by both Putin and his ex-KGB allies to remold France in Russia's image. Thanks for coming today to our studios.
Thank you for inviting me.
I would like to ask you maybe a question that's obvious to you, but perhaps not to me. I just said the title of your book is The Kremlin's Networks in France. It's not Russia's networks in France. There's a big difference.
There is a big difference. There is a big difference because, in a way, I could say that I represent some of the Russian networks in France. I teach Russian. I teach in Russian. I love the Russian culture. I love Russia. I really like this country, and I really like its people. I'm really talking about the people who are, at the moment, for the moment, at the head of Russia. And when you're talking about the KGB allies of Vladimir Putin, it's sort of a weird way because he is from the KGB. So he got his education, his formation from the KGB. And when you're looking at all the people who have responsibilities in Russia, in the politics, in the economics, most of them are from the KGB. So it's not something unusual. So the Kremlin and Russia, they are two very different things.
Very different things, perhaps also with different values right now.
Of course, you know, like a lot of people in Russia, the people who have the time to think it over, they say that there is, maybe they're going too far, but there is some kind of an occupation. And a lot of people are scared right now of saying what's on their mind. So it's not, you know, a lot of people in France, they always tell you, oh, Putin is approved by 46% of the population. And, you know, when you have 46%, you already know that it's
86%.
86, excuse me, 86%.
Much higher.
86. And it's not 86%. When you have 86% in any country, you know that it's not a democracy, and you just know that either people are afraid to tell the truth when someone is calling them, and do you like Vladimir Putin? Oh, of course I like him. You know, I got to go to work and I don't want any more trouble. So, the Russian people and the people at its head who got extremely rich in the past 15 years, whereas the population right now is living in difficult conditions, there are two different things.
It's very interesting. I want to get back to the campaign. I said you open your book with this loan to the extreme right party. Yes. We know that they are allies of the Kremlin. Yes. But what's interesting is you say that this campaign reaches a wide network of people that goes well beyond the far right. Tell me which groups are the main targets.
Okay. What was interesting was seeing that money was going from Russia to the Front National. And that at the same time, people from the Front National were defending the Kremlin's point of view. But you can say the same thing from the Republican right. And it was very surprising.
The party of Nicolas Sarkozy, the former president.
Exactly. Before Nicolas Sarkozy got elected president, he said something, and I think that was about Chechnya. He was saying that how could you give your hand to Vladimir Putin? And then he became president, and he became closer and closer. And now, basically, he has exactly the same arguments as Vladimir Putin on a lot of things, on the Ukraine, on Georgia and everything. So there is, when you see Mariani is the political figure. Mariani. Yeah, he's the political figure who is at the head of all the, getting closer.
That was Russian.
That was Russian. Of getting closer with the Russian authorities. He was the one who is leading politicians to go to the Crimea.
Remind our viewers who he is exactly. Remind our viewers who he is.
He is from the party of Sarkozy. So, and that was very interesting. When this delegation of French politics went to the Crimea, although the European Union said that, no, we don't recognize the annexion of the annexion of Crimea by Russia. And he went there. And France and the people at the National Assembly, they said, no, we don't want politicians to go there because it will be some kind of a recognition de facto. And they just didn't care about anything, about any concept, any, not like I can talk about law, but any agreement, European agreement, and they went there. And at the head was Mariani, and he goes there all the time. He's from the party of Sarkozy, and he's the one who is doing a lot of things to get this party closer, and a lot of observers now say that this party is on the same positions as Vladimir Putin's Kremlin.
Interesting. The mainstream conservative party in France. What do you think? Something in this campaign is obviously working a little bit.
Yes.
What do you think the people who you were just talking about, what are they finding attractive about this message? Why are they endorsing Putin's message?
Well, there are at least three things. First of all, but let's put it out, the way the money that Marine Le Pen received is attractive. Right. People have the impression that there are a lot of money in Russia.
Some business people, then.
It's business. It's just one thing. Second, the Kremlin could develop some, let's call it soft power tools. In the sense, for example, he's talking to the people to the right in France. He sort of created this image that Russia is now developing a policy to protect some values, Christian values, family values, and it's all created from nothing. Just saying we are, for example, against the fact that gay people get married. We are for people to get a religion education. When you know Russian, when you know the country, it's sort of weird because, unfortunately, in that country, it was people were not allowed to go to church for 75 years almost. People could not have many children because of the politics, but they constructed this image. So you will have a lot of French people, like nice French people, people who don't get money from the Kremlin, who will say, oh, see, the Holy Russia. The Holy Russia is defending our values. We're also against this marriage between gay people and everything. So we will be on the Russian side. It's
a misleading, then, impression that many people have of Russia. It's interesting because you said earlier, you travel to Russia quite often. You love the country.
I really like it.
And yet you make the point that the people who really love Russia are perhaps the ones who are not afraid to criticize it.
Of course. Of course. The thing is, when you go to Russia, first of all, you talk to a lot of people, especially when you know the language. And you see that the reality is not the reality that is shown by the Kremlin representatives in France. People who have this kind of idealized image of Russia in France, very often they don't go to Russia, they don't read Russian, and they don't speak Russian. And of course, when you love a country, your country or another country, you would like the people to live as good as they can. And for the moment, I don't think that the Russians live very well in Russia.
It's very interesting because you'll remember the famous speech where Putin said 10 years ago, I think, that the collapse of the Soviet Union was the greatest geopolitical tragedy of the 20th century. And yet he's adopting a lot of the methods, according to your book,
yes,
in this campaign, notably bringing back the Soviet-era common term.
Yes.
Briefly, how does that work?
Well, he's not using the word himself. The word Comintern, that was the network that existed after the revolution, and you had a lot of spies and you had a lot of people who were trying to start a revolution in Europe. And I was just amazed to know that shortly after the revolution, when there was absolutely no money and nothing in Russia, Lenin was already paying for his agents to try to start a revolution. And
a worldwide revolution.
Yeah, and in Europe, it started in Germany, it failed, it started in Hungary, and it failed. And they were trying to do it, and they did it basically till 43. And I'm not. Putin is not using the word, but this word is being used by the Czech in Czechoslovakia, in Czechia, the secret services, and they're saying, don't what you said at the beginning. Don't think that Putin is trying to rebuild the Berlin Wall. He's trying to have his people at the right places in politics, in business, in culture, who can influence and do the politics he would like to have.
And unfortunately, Cécile Vissier, we're going to have to leave it there, but you leave us with that very interesting idea, which is what I mentioned in the beginning, trying to reform or remold France more in Russia's image.
Of course.
So not trying to raise the Berlin Wall again. You heard it here. Cécile Vissier is the author of a new book, out for now only in French, called the Kremlin's Networks in France. We hope it will be out in English at some point.
Yes.
And you all can read it. Very interesting about the very broad Kremlin campaign to build up influence, not just in France, but across Europe. You've been watching the interview here on France 24. Thanks very much, and stay tuned for more.